I'm Rob Clayman with the Oshkosh Chamber. I'll just mention that Amplify Oshkosh. And thanks, Mark Culphin was on here earlier. He set all this up for us. So.
Way to go, Mark. We appreciate you.
This is a program of the Oshkosh Chamber. It's really a grassroots, community-driven initiative. We're pretty much in our 6th year with Amplify Oshkosh now, and really promoting technology, tech careers, digital technology, all those sorts of things, and trying to bring people together. So it's been an interesting time the last 6-8 months, especially for Amplify. A lot of our events are really in-person, people-oriented, so we've been editing on the fly, as most organizations have been. And we're hoping that our coffee clutches that we're doing here now can be in person in the near future. But interesting story. We had somebody call us late last week and said, "Hey, you guys know that you're spelling coffee clutch wrong." Does everybody, does that make sense to a couple of you? Then we started Googling and said, what? And there's also a coffee clutch, KLATSCH or TCH, but he said, you might want to change that. But then I Googled, there's also coffee clutch. And I asked about 10 people over the weekend, how would you spell coffee clutch? And every one of them said, huh? Coffee, CLUTCH. So I'm like, all right, we're going to let it. But technically there is a coffee clutch. So just a little trivia contest out there.
It might even be pronounced the same. Like a
it probably is. Yeah. You learn something new every day.
Yep.
So, but anyway, I know Tina might do this a little bit later. I just want to thank we have annual sponsors that contribute pretty significantly to this effort in addition to a lot of events that we raise money for that help support the effort. But we have some platinum sponsors: Oshkosh Corporation, the Oshkosh Area School District, and Smart IS are platinum sponsors. They provide the most, but we have other gold level sponsors in Fox Valley Tech, Bank First, and Stellar Blue Technologies. And then our silver sponsor right now is Change Management, Tina's organization. So we just want to note that we appreciate that. And Amplify certainly wouldn't be where it is today without the support it's received over this past 6 years. So with that, we've got some other events that we'll promote later on that are coming up, but this is our first attempt at a coffee clutch.
Yeah.
We've got another one scheduled December 10th. We were hoping to be in person at the Rise and Grind, but we'll see, how things are going, and we'll, push information out on that. But Tina was gracious enough to host this for an event today, and is going to be talking about kind of Zoom fatigue and online meeting etiquette. So I'll just turn it over to you, Tina, and just thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thanks. Yeah, at Change Management, we work with our clients, and a lot of what we work on is communication and leadership and leading change. What we've noticed, even prior to the pandemic, is online meetings are a little bit of a special beast. And global corporations have more practice in online and virtual meetings than others, but they still experience many of the same pitfalls. So today, let's talk about some of those challenges we face with Zoom and other virtual meetings and virtual ways of connecting, sometimes webinars and things like that. E-learning is certainly something that's going on. And then we'll talk about Zoom fatigue. We'll talk about online meeting etiquette. We'll get your ideas. We'll put it all together and get the information back to you so you have a good reference guide and can innovate ways to avoid the fatigue and to provide the best leadership in online meeting etiquette so that you make the most of this time that we spend together virtually. So what I'm going to do is ask everybody to just, because this is social too, so I want to kind of warm up and get us going, interacting, a couple of guidelines with virtual meetings. And I have a hard time with this because I have a lot of energy. I like people, I like talking to people, but it's important to let a few seconds rest after a question so somebody else can chirp in, and then give a few seconds after they're complete with their information, because otherwise with virtual technologies, if we speak over each other or at the same time, it's a kind of a miserable audience or viewer or listener experience. So I'm going to suggest that, but I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself in a special way. So I want you to tell me who you are, what your role is, and you can share where you work, but I really want to know your pet peeve about virtual meetings and virtual work experiences. So let's see, Bobbi, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Call me out right out of the gate. You know that I've got something going on, right? So I am Bobbi Miller with Fox Valley Workforce Development Board. I'm a business solutions manager. Basically, I work with companies about their hiring needs and some of their workforce issues. And my pet peeve, and I'm going to kind of encompass this into a big bucket and then, give you an example, is that, even though we aren't there in person, we still see people, and it's not a license to do the things that you wouldn't do in person, right? So that's kind of my big bucket. An example of that, last week I was on a meeting, someone was on their phone all the time. You could clearly see that. At one point, this person pulled out a shirt and put a back scratcher in and started doing this. Yeah. And I just about fell off my chair. I was like, you're representing your company. You wouldn't do that in person. What makes you think, turn off the video if you need to. Be adults.
Thank you. Thank you. So be who you'd be in person if you were meeting in person.
Yeah.
I like that. All right. Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin MacWilliams. I'm a marketing specialist at SmartIS. I used to help coordinate Amplify out of the chamber, but I'm still around. I'm helping with marketing and events and all that. I would say one of my biggest pet peeves is actually what I'm doing right now. It looks like I'm distracted, but I'm taking notes on a separate laptop. But I don't know. I feel like it's hard to not give direct eye contact over a computer screen, obviously, but I mean, completely looking away is distracting while you're trying to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. I'm doing the same thing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jeff, how about you?
Jeff McBride. I'm an IT manager at Thrivent Financial. And we've been virtual since the beginning of March and probably will be for at least a year yet. But my team's split up between Minnesota and Appleton, and we've been doing virtual meetings quite a bit, even before we went remote. But I would say probably out of the 8,000 pet peeves with virtual meetings, my biggest one is people that have their TV on in the background during the meeting. And it's like, it's one thing, if you want to look at the visual or something like that, but then, you're hearing the news and the commercials and, the talk shows and stuff like that. And it's like, either go mute or turn your TV down or turn it off or whatever. But it's kind of annoying to me personally.
Got it. Yeah, I hear ya. Ooh. All right, Patty, how about you?
I'm Patty Lonko from Nightberry Title. I'm account executive here. So my job has been very difficult the past 6-8 months because I can't meet with people. So I've been trying to do as much Zoom as possible. And one thing that I really hate is when people are making all kinds of noise and don't realize that there's a mute button. So kind of the same thing. Or even like when I'm conducting a meeting and I have people muted as they come in and they unmute themselves. I hate that.
Got it. Good, good. Thank you. All right. Joe, how about you?
Well, I'm Joe Derenne from Heartland Business Systems. I live in Oshkosh. This is Oshkosh behind me. Not a fake. I'm a senior consultant for ERP software, accounting software for Microsoft Dynamics. The Chamber actually is a client of mine for their accounting software. Doing this for over 22 years, so really enjoy the job. I also, you might see me a lot in the community because I do a lot of coaching and other things for Oshkosh North. Sorry to say that if you're West people and just saying who I am. My biggest pet peeve that I really have is that not everyone uses Zoom. Our company uses WebEx, but I get on these Mitel. I mean, there's like 8 or 9 different ones, and half the time my mic doesn't work. And right now my mic's not working, so that's why I'm on the telephone.
Oh, gosh.
It's frustrating. All the technology is not working properly.
Right. Thank you. Jolene, how about you?
Quick unmute. Well, there's a lot of similar things, especially the whole sound in the background. But I find it hard when I'm distracted, right? So I might be looking at you, but then I have, because we use Microsoft Teams, so then I get a message from Teams and I'm like, oh, I better answer that. And like, it's like ADD on steroids, and oh my gosh. And like, because I'm looking at a computer, which I can do other work, then I think, well, maybe I can do other work, you know? So I'm like that annoying one that might be looking off. And you know what I really hate too is if I do need to do work, and let's say I put this to my other screen, and then I like looking at you, but I'm not looking at you. So it's hard. But it's a pet peeve of my own self. Like right now I've had like 4 Teams messages pop up at me. So it's like, you know, but it's hard to be present, right? Because it's like, if I'm with you, I'm going to be with you. So it's because we're tied to this computer that we have everything else on. I'm not all the way present. Does that make sense?
It sure does. It sure does. Thank you. Pam, how about you?
I'm Pam Schutz. I'm with Covey. We're a nonprofit that serves individuals with developmental disabilities. We too have done an enormous amount of virtual meetings and whatnot. And a lot of, you know, someone said 8,000 pet peeves. Yes, I guess my biggest pet peeve is when people don't understand their technology. And so their microphone's on, but they're calling in on a phone as well. And everything just is echoing back, echoing back, echoing back. And you can't hear at all or understand at all what's going on in the meeting.
Yes, I can imagine. That's the worst noise, I think, that a human can hear, is that feedback sound. Ugh. Adrian, I noticed that your mic is off, but I also noticed that you were trying to connect. Are you able to connect with voice?
Yeah, I can do sound. I just turn it off when other people are talking because I'm in the office. So if somebody walks by or things like that, I don't want them to be that annoying background noise that we hear in meetings.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I'm Adrian. I work at Clarity Care. We work with individuals that have differing abilities as well. I work in community employment. So I help individuals find and maintain employment in the community and provide coaching and things like that. One of my biggest pet peeves is the issue I'm having today where my camera doesn't want to work. So definitely having struggles with the technology working all the time or consistently, and it's definitely been a little bit of a challenge, especially when other people aren't necessarily able to meet in person or things like that, and we can't have that face-to-face because cameras aren't working or microphones. So it's definitely one of my biggest pet peeves right now.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, Barb, are you able to connect with voice? And Barb, if you're not, you can chat in. I won't make you chat for everybody, but just let us know if you're not able to hear, and maybe, or not able to speak. And maybe, Caitlin, are you able to help Barb troubleshoot? Maybe you could chat with her? Thank you. Thank you. Barb, we'll get that going. Gosh, first off, I really appreciate everybody being open and honest and a little bit vulnerable, you know, sharing your pet peeves. Sometimes we step on others' toes or make other people feel uncomfortable because they kind of go, I've had that problem. But when I look at the pet peeves, I'm seeing that tech trouble is high on the pet peeve list, and some are experiencing that even today. Background noise, and then being present or distraction are really the big hitters here. And then, you know, how you would behave or dress if you were meeting somebody in a conference room or in their office versus an at-home environment or a different environment. So I'm going to invite everybody, if you're not already doing this, to look at the upper right hand, whoops, I guess it's this way when I'm in reflection, the upper right hand corner of your screen where it says view, click on that and click on the option for speaker view. When you click on the option for speaker view, what do you see?
You.
The first.
Yeah. So thank you, Jeff. So what I have found with my personal experience is that most users prefer this view to the Brady Bunch view. And the reason why they prefer this view is because we don't see ourselves and everyone else. We can't. So if you're distracted by somebody not making eye contact, or you feel bad about not making eye contact, it's a little less noticeable when you have the speaker view on. And the other thing is when you're the speaker, so I'm not staring at myself. Sometimes we get distracted by our own image. So our ego sometimes gets in the way, like, oh, my hair looks bad, or my double chin looks fat, or whatever it is. But I can't see that right now. So all I can see you, and you get more of my authenticity when we put it in this view. Okay, so was that helpful? Seeing some nodding?
Yep.
Good. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Zoom fatigue. Has everybody experienced it or nobody experienced it? I have experienced it.
Yeah, I don't know necessarily during the work, because again, you know, we did a lot of virtual meetings before we went, just because of the size of our company and the multiple offices. But where I'm finding more is some other things that I'm involved with that we can't meet in person. So you're doing like off, like quote unquote business hours, additional meetings. And I've talked to some other people that I know are involved in some of the same groups, and they're actually not participating because they said, you know, I do so much video conferencing during the day, I don't feel like doing it either before work hours or after work hours. So it's more other activities that they'd maybe be involved with versus the work activities that they
Sure.
are kind of like burnt out on, and they said, I just don't want to do anymore after my 8 hours of working.
I can relate to that for sure. Anybody else have anything to add about Zoom fatigue, like what you notice about it or experience?
Well, I think, yeah, I would agree with Jeff. I think you just, after a while, you just kind of get tired of the whole video chat. I mean, the whole behind the screen thing, and you'd rather be in an in-person meeting. So like you said earlier, Tina, we want to interact. We're all kind of from a communication perspective, and
Yeah.
it just gets, after a while, it's like, man, I just wish we could get back to some real in-person meetings. I
Right.
that from people more than anything.
Gosh, yeah. And I'm way behind on hugs. Just way behind on hugs. So I hear you. Sure. Yeah. Is there anyone else who wants to talk a little bit about their Zoom fatigue experiences?
I don't know if it's Zoom fatigue as much as just screen fatigue. I'm an avid reader, and in recent years, I began reading on a tablet instead of, like a paperback book or a hardcover book. I find myself having a really difficult time focusing on anything electronic outside of work hours. So I read a couple pages and I'm just like, I haven't processed any of this. I can't even think about this. Or even watching TV. I'm a huge Packer fan. I have trouble paying attention to the Packer games because it's on a screen.
Yeah. Yeah. I sure hear you on that.
And I think, Tina, there's something about the waves that we're experiencing this. That, originally it was the wave of, we don't know how our technology is working. Is it work? So there was that learning curve. And then we were like, oh, maybe this is just a temporary thing. Now we're this far into it. And we're like, oh, this looks like it's going to be a little bit longer than what we ever wanted, right? And
Yes.
to Jeff's point, when you start thinking about another year, it's another year of this. But, we've all got these feelings, I think, that it's kind of like being on a diet. The novelty has worn off.
Long ago. After I missed my first meal. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else?
I've been getting a lot more headaches.
Oh, headaches. Oh, yeah.
So I ordered some blue blocking glasses from Amazon, which are actually pretty cute and pretty cheap. So if I know that I have, just like Jolene, I should have mine on too today. But if I know I have a day with a lot of screen time, I'll put them on.
Yes.
They give that weird reflection, so I'm not a super fan, but they do the trick.
Yeah, that's cool. Very good. Joe, was that you who had something else?
Yeah, someone else brought it up, the fact that our organization is a big Microsoft Teams organization, so no one looks at calendars. So it comes down to, like right now, I just had to hang up on 3 people. They're trying to call me during this meeting. That's everything is now a Teams thing. And, it's not just Zoom, but it's nonsense on the connection. Or if you're in the office, which I've been working from my home for 20 years, so I love going into the office and I get to see people, but it's something you miss, and the connection, and instead of getting a Zoom call or Teams thing from the person in the cube next to you, you at least can go say hi and catch up on personal stuff besides just work.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, so is there anybody else who has another experience with Zoom fatigue or frustrations that kind of calls, ooh, I think I'm having some tech trouble. Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I had a weird tech thing come up on my screen. So it said it was changing my speaker. So if I sound different, or chat in if it gets weird, it's those tech issues. Usually I can solve them, but okay. So it's interesting because what causes Zoom fatigue is often our own pet peeves that we talked about. But it's also true that video conferencing, meeting virtually, it requires more focus from humans. It requires you to spend more image trying to understand all kinds of additional cues that are missing. So if you think about our language, and and gesturing, like you probably can't even see me gesturing, right? Unless I do it up here. There are a lot of nonverbal cues that we get in conversations and meetings, even from a meeting with a number of people that we just aren't getting online. So that requires more energy for participants and even speakers. As speakers, or when you're talking, you'll find that you're trying to emote a little more, trying to get your point and your emotion about the idea across. And people say, well, yeah, that's people who are highly emotional or highly sensitive or whatever, but that's not even true. You cannot have a human thought process, a complete thought, without attaching an emotion to it. It's just impossible. So we all have emotions. They show up non-verbally most of the time. But when we're trying to convey something, we may even be unconsciously trying to convey that emotion in a way that is much more challenging virtually. Another thing that gets in the way, that drains some of our energy, is sometimes when you're in a meeting, you can just look at the person next to you and say, oh, what was that? I missed that. And it's hard to do that with technology. You could do it through chat or other ways, right? Connect with other people in the audience. But man, Rob, how many times were you and I in an Amplify meeting and somebody starts talking about a technology and you are like, hey, is that a thing? What do you know about that? And we have a little micro side conversation, but it keeps us going and engaged and understanding. And we can't do that so much virtually. And then, so I'm just trying to share with you the heavy hitters that really get to us, get to most people. The other one is really our own ego gets in the way. That's that seeing yourself and whether or not you're comfortable with seeing yourself. And most humans are not comfortable seeing themselves all damn day. They're not accustomed to looking at themselves, right? Like, so I'm the kind of gal that gets up in the morning, puts on my clothes. Today I put on makeup. I don't always. You get ready for the day. And that's generally the last time I saw myself, other than when I was washing my hands. And I really don't care that I'm in the middle of my day and I'm not going to change it anyway. Well, folks, I have found that when I'm doing a lot of video calls, I care more about how I look to the audience. And you know what? The audience really doesn't give a damn, is what I've also learned. They will connect with what I say and who I am. And I've noticed that if I just turn it to speaker view and I don't see myself, I connect better with others. So, and I don't feel so drained. I don't have to look at myself and wonder how other people think about me, which can be a real distraction. So I'm curious, what are your ideas to combat these, top hitters in Zoom fatigue, like the energy drains? What are some ways you can combat these challenges, which is, how can you focus more? How do you be less subject to the energy drains from lack of body language and having to express yourself a little bit more boldly or differently, if you want to express whatever emotion you want to share with the idea, and those missing side exchanges and your ego? What are some ideas you have?
Yeah, I think one of the things, most people aren't book solid from 8 till 5, and regardless of whether you had the meeting or just working, is especially when you're working remote, is to get up and just stretch and take your 10-15 minute break. For where I was, it was easy to get up in between meetings and walk down the cafeteria and get some water or coffee or something like that and just kind of take a break and stuff. But you find yourself a lot of times, and this is pretty common, I know, among my team when we meet, and it's also brought up at Thrivent as well, is that if you just sit and you don't get up, and because you don't have that interaction, you can't even just have the cube conversation with somebody across the aisle, is that overall you just kind of get burnt out and worn out by the end of the day because you're not moving, you're not interacting, so one of the things, we've tried to encourage as a company is that, get up and just take that break, walk around the house, or, like right now when the weather is nice, go outside for 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Instead of just sitting there at your computer for 8 or 9 hours.
I so agree. And I even take it a step further with that outside time. Outside time is an antidote and an energy recharger. So I know winter is coming, right? Not to get all, what is it, throne games on you or whatever, but Game of Thrones. But we all grew up in Wisconsin, or at least have lived here more than a minute. So if you live in Wisconsin, you can go outside in any weather. It's not going to hurt you. And even a 2 to 3 minute outside, noticing the weather, breathing the air, step outside, take 4 steps from the building you're in. Take 4 steps, giant steps if you can, and just be outside. Even for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever it is, it's going to change your energy. It's going to recharge you. That's just truth. So I encourage you to do that to combat or recharge from Zoom fatigue. Give yourself a break.
I would agree. I think what's interesting is, now we're on the Zoom meeting, and when we end the Zoom meeting, if we don't do what you just said, and Jeff, we go back to our email on our other screen, and and so and I think Patty mentioned headaches and all that. It's constantly looking at a screen, and so I think the best time is when you're transitioning out of a meeting to not go right back to your email to do that. And somebody said to actually, because we're always looking in short distances with headaches and just your eyes and eyesight, to look out your window and look at an object that's farther away versus a 1-foot screen. Could help also if you can't get outside or something.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I think it's really important that we've got our meetings structured somewhat like you're doing, Tina, that, other people have to participate, right? And it helps them from sitting back in this passive role of, well, I'm just taking this all in. That, at certain points, I'm going to be expected to say or do or engage in some way. I think that's really helpful. To the energy and the activity level, one thing that you can't see in the corner of my new little office is I recently got an exercise bike that has a laptop tray.
Oh, nice.
And I'm just going to, as it starts to get cold, I'm trying not to use it a whole lot now because I don't want the newness to wear off. But it was like, I need something else to, maybe have a plan B for when the weather isn't so great. And I had recently given up my Y membership. So I was like, I got to do something.
Great. Way to go. Yeah, both of
Tina,
them.
I think one other thing, I can't say that, necessarily have a, a solution for it, but you were kind of alluding a little bit before, and I think it kind of ties a little bit to the side conversations or whatever, but just running the meetings, what I find is small meetings, like when I have my team meetings and things like that, there's a familiarity with everybody. And so even you do get some side conversation stuff going on there, but when, I'm involved in, we got a project going on right now. We got a daily stand-up meeting that's got like 30, 40 people in. And I think one of the things that I see that's kind of lacking is moderation skills for the person that's running the meeting, because it does sometimes spiral out of control with people trying to talk over other people. And it takes a different skill set versus, doing it to 30, 40 people versus being in a conference room. It's a little bit easier to control that way and keep the meeting moving along. So, it just seems to me like that's one thing that that is missing sometimes, is somebody that's really good at running a virtual meeting with lots of people in it.
Yes, and I do have that in my notes to talk about online meeting leadership. And if we don't get to that today with this coffee clutch, I invite any of you who want to explore that to get in touch with me, and we'll have a conversation. Because you're absolutely right, that moderation, or kind of facilitator or guiding the conversation, that role needs to be filled. So if we take a look at online meeting etiquette, ideally, if I were to choose who I'd need in a meeting, I would need somebody to monitor the technology and help troubleshoot. And on the fly, I delegated Caitlin for that. The second thing that I would do is have somebody available to take notes that can be distributed quickly after the event. The third person I would ask is find somebody who has those good moderation skills, or brush up on your own, practice brushing up on your own moderator skills if you're the leader, to lead the meeting and hold to the agenda. But every meeting, the most important thing for a meeting is to have a purpose, to state the purpose in the beginning, and validate at the end of the meeting if you accomplished that purpose. And by validation, I don't mean you saying, okay, we did this. Get the feedback from the attendees. Did we fulfill our purpose? But I am very careful to only invite people who need to participate, so everybody has a role in the meeting. So sometimes when you have a meeting, a stand-up meeting of 34 people, would you have a stand-up meeting in person with 34 people?
Yes, we would.
Okay.
Just because of the size of the project. But again, it's easy to, you start having conversations that get sidetracked. And the thing that I've noticed since this started up a couple weeks ago is that there doesn't seem to be a person that, like, quote unquote, owns the meeting and get the conversation back on track. And something that should take a half an hour all of a sudden is bleeding into 30, 35, 40 minutes because we're not keeping on task and saying, okay, here are the 5 things we need to talk about today. These are the pressing issues. And that's the purpose of this specific meeting, is what are the key things that need to be addressed and who's going to take ownership. And there's not a strong person that is doing that to keep those conversations on task.
Yeah, that's great. There is a format that I've used if you're interested to help determine like everybody's role in the meeting when you do need 34. It sounds like some people just need to be informed and consulted, but there is a technique, and I can send you kind of like an overview that we use and share with our clients. It's called RACI. It's a project management tool. So R is responsible, A is accountable, S is support, I is inform, C is consult. Did I get all of them, Jeff? RASCI, consult. Yeah. Consult. C is consult. So some of the people in your meeting will not be speaking if they're just there to be informed, right? Or to support. So if everybody has a letter after their name for a particular meeting, they know whether they keep their mic muted the whole time or not.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with the RACI concept.
So I apply that to some meeting structures as well, especially when you have a short meeting, a brief with a large audience. Right. What do we have? What kind of ideas do we have about asserting energy or emoting, right? Understanding emotions of your audience and also your own self.
So you can always turn your screen off if you don't need to be, seen.
Yes. So what I do in that instance, I think that's a really good approach, and I appreciate it. What I've learned is not everybody appreciates it. So there are some meetings, some corporate cultures that prefer everybody show up visible throughout the whole meeting. There are some reasons for that. The reasoning behind it is we can tell if you're paying attention or if you're on the phone with somebody else, right? So sometimes that's just to know what the corporate culture is around that, or the meeting group culture. But yes, I think turning it off is a good idea.
So there is times I had a few months ago, like a one-on-one with my 2 leaders. So it's a 2-on-1, not a one-on-one, 2-on-1. And we're transitioning some of my duties to other people so I can do other things. And I didn't realize this, but at the time, like my hand started coming to my face, and he said, "What, can you tell me what you're feeling right now?" Because we're all about emotional intelligence at Verve, and so he's like, "What's going on here?" And I said, "I'm just worried that these folks that are already busy aren't going to have time to like have proper training." And I was worried for like the member experience if some of the things I handle get passed on. And he said if he hadn't saw that right out, because he's like you could just see I was worried. So had he not seen that, then he would have just kept going in the conversation. So and that's what's really missing with these Zoom versus in person. And I miss being funny, like like when you said no one looks at each other at themselves, and I was going to tease, well, I have a mirror in front of me, but like I don't, but I'm just like a funny person. So like it's hard because then I keep that inside, and then it's like you kind of squash a bit of yourself. I don't know, it's weird, but
yeah,
so I don't know.
I invite you to think about before you enter a meeting, like, what's my funny moment going to be? And you don't have to have an answer, but just to ask yourself that question, you may come up with it during the meeting. Your unconscious mind will start becoming a little bit more playful. So
well, I think I'm missing my playfulness, and I
yeah,
have playfulness, but I can't really share it because like you're leading the meeting, right? So I could have messaged to Patty like, Patty, I got a mirror, but it's not really like I don't have a mirror, so it's, you know what I mean? Like,
but you could have, and you did add it, and that's awesome.
Well, no, I did, because
but timing, right? Yeah. Yeah. So really, Jolene, put it on a Post-it note or something near your monitor, where's my funny moment in this next engagement?
Jolene, you might find that people are really needing some of that right now, that, that comic relief could do all of us a world of good.
Oh.
And, it's just about having at the right time with the right, like anything else, making it appropriate. I will say, Tina, that sometimes I get challenged by having this serious demeanor. And
I can imagine.
I don't know where it really comes from. I don't think, internally, I don't feel all that serious. So, sometimes people will tell me that I've got this demeanor that, is way too serious. And I'm like, so I'm trying extra hard sometimes in these virtual meetings to try to convey some other emotion, because I don't need the resting bitch face to come out. I'll just say it.
Well, that's the thing when we're staring at everybody, right? And there's so many people to see in little boxes, and you're really focusing. Yeah, I look like a grumpy old lady when I do that. I do. And so what I've noticed is like the practice I suggested for Jolene, I have practices myself to really listen in and figure out how to connect with people. And it always helps me if I'm in a meeting and there are people that I've been with and know. Like if I've been with some of the audience and know them in person, I can connect with the others as well, because I have this like little bit more casual demeanor. So if I practice engaging with them like I would in person, because I can imagine it more, like even with you, Bobbi, like you and I have been together in person so many times, I know how to lean in, right? And I know how to gauge your responses, and I see you doing the same thing. So we have that bond and rapport already. I can build that quicker with other members in the audience when I see them, because I'm practicing with you. So if you need to add people to your meeting to benefit you as a speaker, sometimes it's okay to do that. Or if nothing else, practice with somebody before your meeting. If it's an important meeting and you have an audience that you haven't connected with in person before, connect with somebody, even if it's your niece, nephew, grandkid, brother, sister, mom, dad. Do a quick little FaceTime with them and really connect, like watch your body language, feel your face respond, right? The facial, and then you'll be able to connect with others better too. It's a practice. Thank you
I'm
for
wondering if people, do some folks in their organizations, do they require when they're doing a virtual meeting, they say this is an in-person meeting, meaning your face will be on the screen and not, I mean, I've noticed a lot, Bobby, maybe if you noticed in our regional meetings that we have, when we first started doing them months and months ago, everybody was appearing on screen and it seemed a little more normal. But lately, I think people are doing other things. They don't want to miss anything in the meeting. They want to hear the data, but they're kind of tuned out, their mic's off, their video's off. But I'm wondering if are some organizations saying if you're not there in person, you know, if you don't have your video on, you're not part of the meeting. I mean, is that, I'm thinking meeting etiquette.
Sure.
No, I mean,
Meeting etiquette, absolutely, Rob. I think that is a great step as we get into more and more virtual meetings. So kind of like when Jeff and I were talking about the large audience and who needs to be there, and having a key person taking notes to follow up immediately after. And you can always record these meetings too. Like if somebody really wants to bore themselves to death, just go ahead and watch a few virtual meetings, not as a participant. Holy cow, you'll want to do something else. But talk about checking out. But yes, if somebody is not available to be present, and it's not a technology problem. So Adrian, I get it. And I think Barb, you had something going on too with yours. But if people aren't actively participating and willing to shut everything else off, would you really be at that meeting in person?
good point. Or if you were in person, you'd be.
Yeah. If it was like in real life, not virtual, right? Would you be there in that meeting, answering your phone, checking your emails, doing this and that? I treat virtual meetings like I was there in that person's office or building. And that's the only way that I can focus. I have to turn everything else off. And I request that of our own team, and I request that of our clients when we have group meetings, that they be fully present, and it's part of the culture. So I think it's important to communicate expectations about those meetings. And as a leader, if I noticed I had like a meeting, a recurring meeting, and people were starting to check out, I'd ask the questions. I'd say, hey, is this meeting valuable? What are you getting? What's missing? Do we need to do something different with this? Because, you know, sometimes those recurring meetings outwear their usefulness. They outlive their usefulness.
The only thing that I'll chime in on that, Tina, is that with the virtual, there is that time, and maybe it's just my connectivity, but the more people that are part of the meeting, the more buffering and the more freezing I get.
Oh,
so sometimes it's a quantity issue, you know, that there are so many people in the meeting that I need to go, you know, turn off my camera just because I'm going to lose something. And I, you know, it's like, well, that's the least of my worries if they can't see me right now. But I do still try to stay present, even if I'm not showing a camera.
Sure. And in that, the technology really can help with that. Kind of like when Jeff and I were talking about the 35 people in the stand-up meeting. If you have your mic muted, you may also have your video muted if bandwidth is an issue, and just call it out. Hey, everybody here who's here to be informed or as a support, please turn off your video and your mute your mic unless we call on you and need you, or you raise your hand or something like that. Because you do want people to participate if there is something that does come up. But yeah, I totally get it. Totally get it. So best case, like there's always good, better, best, right? Best is smaller meetings, everybody present, visible, like you would be in a room. Then next best would be, you know, bigger audience, try it with everybody or as many as possible, fully visible, and take turns muting mics. And then, you know, good is having a lot of the audience with their mic and video off and really trusting that they're getting value. Check in and make sure that they did get value after the meeting, though. I would. Anything else about that etiquette? I'm looking at our time. It's 10:57. So I want to respect your time. That is another part of online meeting etiquette. We all have back-to-back meetings, or, you know, our schedules might be tight. I know that I have been challenged by the time-space continuum far more often in a virtual world than I ever had in the past. I used to add in travel time for my calendar and, you know, even talk to my assistant and say, hey, I also need time to park and go to the bathroom. We need that in our virtual world too. So add some buffers in your calendar, explore your settings. Joe, I have found settings in Microsoft Teams that I can have it automatically refuse all calls and send a message while I am in a meeting. It just blocks everything. So check out your settings and in the technology and see if they can help you be less distracted. Let's see. For social type of meetings, and even work meetings, if there's an opportunity to do it by phone to help offset fatigue, I will do that, or email or something like that. If there's an opportunity to do it a different way, I will find other ways to connect with those people more visibly, but I prefer one-on-one. So notice if you haven't connected with your coworkers and colleagues, important people in your circle of influence, connect with them one-on-one virtually if you're not getting them in the meetings, and limit the meetings. If you're experiencing eye and other fatigue because of video or virtual meetings, there are a couple ways to go about it, and these are on a continuum, right? So one approach is set up all your virtual meetings in one day, if you can, and have the other day off. Another one is limit the amount in a day. Schedule things in between virtual meetings that you can do without exerting what you do in an online meeting. So those are some strategies. I am open for questions, but I really am appreciative of your time. So if you have a question, let me know. Otherwise, we'll be sending some notes and some feedback questions, and I hope you all participate with that, along with some ideas, share some ideas for our next Coffee Clutch, what you'd like the topic to be.
Thanks for your time, Tina.
Oh,
Yep.
Thank you, Jolene.
I think this was a good conversation.
Thanks, Jeff.
It's
And
good
I
to
got to
hear from
roll.
others.
Yeah, have a great day.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Tina.
Bye, Joe. Thank you. Thank you, Patty, Bobbi, Caitlin.
Give you a virtual hug.
Ah, I appreciate it. I love it. Thank you.
All right.